Coming up on this episode of the Roundtable.
You disgusting worms! Rumspringa. That's the Klaven Rumspringa.
I used to read and be smart.
She clearly didn't read her Jordan Peterson.
She did not read her Jordan Peterson.
To capture what's really happening to our souls right now. It's terribly damaging, and it's not being talked about, and it's not properly understood. And even to start to talk about why it's happening is preemptively being portrayed as a kind of thought crime against public health.
I mean, the reason we're talking about it is because when we see this, we see a very deep and sick culture that outside of the virus, all of its pathologies are represented in this image, and you go, my God, is this all there is? This is really who we've become. And in that respect, the virus has revealed who we are and what we think is appropriate.
You know, this is the biggest wealth transfer from the middle and lower middle class to the upper class probably in the history of man. And we should all be cognizant of that and use it politically and intellectually. Welcome, everyone, once again to the Roundtable, the publishers and editors podcast here at the Claremont Institute and the American Mind. I'm your host, Ryan Williams, president of the Claremont Institute, publisher of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books, joined by Matthew Peterson, vice president of education, founding editor of the American Mind, Spencer Klaven, associate editor of the American Mind and the Claremont Review of Books, David Barr, director of publications here at the Claremont Institute, where he promotes and hawks all of our wares, and James Pullis, executive editor of the American Mind. Welcome, gentlemen. How was everyone's Thanksgiving, first of all? Oh, wait. No, we already did that show. Sorry.
It was great. We did a pre-Thanksgiving show, and I can confirm. In fact, I was worried on our pre-Thanksgiving show that I wasn't going to be illegal enough, but I was illegal enough at Thanksgiving. Yeah.
You were with multiple households.
Multiple households, multiple dining indoors like a madman. But that's legal in Indiana where I was.
Right. Yeah. The in-laws came down. Everyone wants to know the heritage turkey was delicious.
Thank you.
Was it worth it?
We mixed it with some Declaration of Independence bar and talked about tax cuts. Yeah.
How good was it? I mean, was it?
Yeah, was it worth
the money, you think, or like it was noticeably good? Like how far?
Yeah, it was probably not worth the extra money.
Do you think it was? It made turkey, a different deal. It made turkey great again. Yeah.
No, it's still, I would rather have a rib roast or even a nicely roasted chicken.
Yeah, that's fair. I want the leg. I realized this time around.
Leg,
I just want one turkey leg and another one the next day.
But the virtue of turkey is that with the whole thing, right? You make too much food, so you eat it for another couple of days. So the morning after, I made for my sister-in-law and my wife the Ryan special, which is some fried stuffing with a couple of soft-boiled eggs over it, or eggs over easy over it. All mixed together, delicious. Yeah. The baby loved it too.
Oh yeah,
that sounds incredible.
It's pretty good. So it's just the decadence of the whole thing, and then eating the leftovers in creative ways. So Amelia made some creamy turkey soup, which was also delicious.
Very good, very good.
So, but I like Christmas food better. I always make a standing rib roast.
A rib roast for Christmas. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I guess we do ham. I think about it, but Christmas ham. I really want, what I want is the roast beast that the Grinch himself carved at the end of the Grinch, but I don't know what that is.
Yeah, we had a good one. I mean, we broke lots of laws. It was incredible. So many great moments. But I will say the one thing that I don't know why, because we've done this multiple times, we did not think of, like idiots, is coming back. I flew up, Sacramento to meet my family.
Yeah.
And then we drove back, in the minivan. And I've done this multiple times, but like Charlie Brown on the football, I forget every time. If you come back down the 5, drive from Sacramento to L.A. on Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Oh, it's mad.
It is, multiple hours on
It's
top
like
of your
8
trip.
hours, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was more than that. I would think it was like 8.5 hours. Where it normally it'd be about 5 hours, 40 minutes to get to Pasadena. So you're talking, for those of you who don't know, I mean, you're talking the big highway that goes up right through the Central Valley of California, and you're in the middle of nowhere for hours in stop-and-go traffic. And you are hundreds of miles away from your final destination. Yeah. So that was really...
It's monotonous and 2-lane, and there's a few nice views, but it really sucks.
So we had the kids going nuts. We were going nuts, and then finally, we on the grapevine, this accident cleared up, and all of a sudden, everyone was happy because we were, close, and traffic was moving. And Obla Di, Obla Da became the song of the day for my kids, developing a love of a Beatles song, and that got us home. So
life goes on.
Yeah, life goes on.
Do your kids get screens in the back seat? Do they get to play with like handheld something or no?
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah. Okay.
That's the time for screens. They're going through withdrawal now because they're not having it.
Right, of
any
course.
screens this week. And some things, like one of them is kind of addicted to the games on the phone. I wasn't letting them do that.
Yeah.
But when you're in the car on a long trip, that's exactly the moment when screens come into play.
I completely agree. I was denied all handheld screens as a child, which is like just seems like cruel and unusual punishment.
That's why you know multiple
explains
languages.
That's why I speak. Yeah, exactly. You disgusting worms.
No, I fully agree with withholding, even much more than we have. But I do think that the moments when it's useful,
Sure. It does mean that now there are all these video games that I've never played that I get to play for the first time.
Oh no, I don't know.
Rumspringa. That's the Claven Rumspringa.
I used to read and be smart.
Yeah, that's right.
I kind of feel like this too. I do feel like,
for
I
sure.
used to read things
100%.
and write things, and
Yeah, I used to not have to set aside special time for reading because it was my occupation, and now it's like, well, I have to put the screen away and stop tweeting.
Because as Ryan points out,
we
we do read and write all day. So when you do get home,
right.
Yeah, and I've noticed too, I mean, switching them back between social medias, even when you do it as part of your job, that's our perennial excuse. I have to do it.
I have to look
My
at
wife's like, what are you looking at right now? It's
Twitter,
like 10
it's
o'clock.
job, it's
Why are you
work,
on Twitter? It's about the Institute.
It's Claremont.
But if you do it a lot, it's noticeable. Like my attention span is noticeably worse.
Yeah.
Like it is clear, especially Instagram. It's just bad for your brain. Claven Sr. and Mama Claven were onto something.
They were
of
right.
course.
Where am I supposed to post my gains pics if not on Instagram? Right, that is my question.
TV. Our parents were right. Our parents were right in the 80s. TV does rot your brain,
fair
and social media is even worse.
This is, I think, a reason why more people are turning to the world of video gaming, which seems to be the last place that involves a screen where you can hang out with people with whom you freely associate to do fun stuff. So in the end, it really was all about ethics in video game journalism.
That's interesting. Yeah, I do think that video game communities, of which I am a part, are one of the few kind of untouched. They're basically the same as they always were, which is in itself, I think, like a statement on, because video game communities, for all of their virtues, which I extol from time to time, are not actual communities. You don't see and touch people. And one of the things you find when you meet in person with people whom you only know via video games and message chat and so forth is that you are not the witty and polished person that you imagined yourself to be when you could curate your every word for this person.
You're just a disgusting worm.
I am a disgusting
worm.
A disgusting
But you're a glowworm.
I'm a disgusting 12-language speaking worm.
And some 12-year-old is swearing at you, right, in the multiplayer shooter.
Because I'm not up to par with all these kids.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. We're starting a little lighter this week. I have a story to share. So it's kind of it illustrates the wonderful quality of here at the Claremont Institute, where we're ignoring lockdown orders and working at the office. There's plenty of space. We're plenty socially distanced.
Yes.
But we do have some community here, and my wife and I found this beautiful server that is a server and hutch for your dining room. And it's quite heavy, and we needed Spencer to help us move it from the antique store to the new house that we're renting. And so we got the big U-Haul and wrestled it in there. But we decided, after we'd gotten it in the truck, barely, and tore off a piece of skin on my pinky, that we needed reinforcements at the house. So we had to call Jake from the office, and he came as well. So we moved it in. It was successful. It helps that Spencer's been working out like 6 days a week for months. But the
Fueled by pandemic rage. Yeah.
But the capstone of this is the most Spencer story ever. Jake and Spencer were inside, and I said, "Oh, you got to see the cool Christmas tree. We got a really fat one this year. It's awesome. The baby loves it." And then Spencer saw this tea table that we have, this Arabic tea table that my wife's great-grandfather got either in Palestine or Iraq or Saudi Arabia in probably the 20s. And it's basically a Bedouin's tea table. So it has this collapsible wood feet thing that sort of is in a star, and you can collapse it into basically a parallel line. So it breaks down quite well. And then I think it's, I don't know if it's brass. I think it probably is brass or copper top to it. It's all very lightweight. It's meant so you can strap it onto your camel and move across the desert. And it's engraved with Arabic. And Spencer said, "Oh, what does it say?" And Amelia's like, "I don't know. We don't know what it says." He's like, "Oh, wait, no one's ever translated it? Well, here, let me take a couple of pictures. I'll translate it." And I said, "Spencer, I had forgotten that you read Arabic." He said, "Well, only classical Arabic, only ancient Arabic. But this looks like ancient Arabic to me." So we're soon going to have a translation on our tea table.
Yeah, I'll get back to you guys about it.
My joke with Amelia is that it's going to say "die infidel" or something.
It's going to be the verse about you might slaughter the infidel wherever
or
you
a
find
recipe for tea cakes, or something like that.
No, it's definitely a Quran. I could tell it was a surah. I just can't tell what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, of course
I'm
it's
looking
a surah.
for it. Right.
Yeah.
And it has the famous, the Bismillahi Rahman Rahim, in the name of God, the Almighty and the Merciful, in the middle of it. So we know at least that it's got the invocation. But this was my recompense for feeling like not enough of a man to carry this thing on my own. Although we had to call Jake in for reinforcements, which he did a fantastic job. But I'm currently drinking the fruits of my labor because you guys very kindly recompensed us with this beautiful bottle of Auchentoshan, excuse me, toffee, notes of toffee.
Stop it!
Aged in bourbon casks.
It's good Scotch. We don't
wonderful.
need to say it. It's reminiscent of.
Of course we do.
Of a forest floor.
Pine resin tar.
It reminds me of a
You must
small
return to
wooden
the
Arabian
forest.
table covered with tin on the top.
Yeah, exactly.
Ancient runes.
So anyway, I'm thankful once again for this community we have here, and
Amen.
Thank you, Spencer, and thank you, producer Jake.
It was a pleasure.
Well, we wanted to talk about this New Yorker cover. It's a bit of an obscure and kind of snobby thing to talk about because it's a pretty obscure and snobby publication, but it speaks multitudes. So for those of you that haven't seen it, the easiest way to find it actually is to go on Twitter. You don't have to be on Twitter to go on Twitter. And just search New Yorker cover, and it should come up. I will describe it to you. So it's a young lady of ambiguous racial stock, and I don't care about commenting on racial stock all the time. I just mean I'm pretty sure the New Yorker did this on purpose. She looks, somewhat mixed race, Latino or African American. She's got Amazon boxes in the foreground. She's sort of in the middle of the picture. She's looking at her screen, which is stacked on books. There's Chinese food open behind her books. There's a couple pill bottles. She, from the waist up, is in a somewhat chic evening outfit with hoop earrings, lipstick. She's holding a Manhattan. And then below the waist, out of screenshot, she's in, this is a throwback for you soccer players of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, Umbro shorts. Or what I assume to be with the little triangle thing or the diamond logo. Clearly half-shaven legs, pink slippers. There are not one but two cats in the picture. Strewn about the ground are grocery bags, half of a trash bag into her galley kitchen. She's clearly in a studio apartment in New York. There's a screen that divides her from her bed area, so this is no one bedroom. There's lotion on the ground. There's a used coffee cup. Amazon boxes I already mentioned. Stacks of paper, two cats, weights, a couple gloves, a mask, two masks, of course, in the time of Corona. And then what I presume to be a finished bag of Cheetos. And then in her galley kitchen behind in the background, for some nice contrast here, artistically speaking. A few wine bottles above the fridge, some open cereal, what looks like a Le Creuset, but let's be honest, it's probably a knockoff on the top because she's spending all her money on rent. And then some sort of ancient, it looks to me to be an ancient flip-top CD / cassette player up there, but I could be wrong. Anyway.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
Yes, thank you, James, for putting me out of my misery.
This is the new 12 Days of Christmas.
But Spencer looked it up. So the New Yorker covers always have titles, art titles inside, and this is called Love Life. Oh, and I should mention she's clearly, she's clearly on a date and not at a work meeting because she has a Manhattan in hand. And there's a faint silhouette of one person looking back at her from her computer screen.
This was a dimension of it that I am ashamed to say I had not grokked when I first looked at it, or the 3,000 other
Spencer,
times I
you've
saw
used
it.
that term quite a bit. Can you
grok.
define to grok for us?
Yeah, to grok is just to reckon with or to grasp.
What's the etymology of that?
It comes from the Greek grokane. No. I have no idea. I don't know what the etymology is.
It's Douglas Adams, right?
It's a sci-fi. It's Robert Heinlein.
Oh, that's right. Stranger in a Strange Land.
Right.
That's
Okay.
right.
Much grokking
So-
takes place.
So I mean, it means to like completely,
To just internalize,
completely
and
like
grasp,
dissolve into oneself.
Gestalt moment
yeah.
of comprehension.
So did you? There's actually a description. There's a little bit of a interview in the New Yorker with the author.
Or the artist?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the artist.
Yeah,
And
that's
so the way
interesting.
they describe it, in this latest cover, an astute observer of social mores finds the humor in our increasingly digital search for love. And I think this was apparent. I'm glad to see this in print because it was apparent to me from what they were getting across, right? They're not trying to show us something that they are presenting as a dystopian nightmare. In fact, they are they regard this as kind of whimsical, right? Finding the humor in our increasingly digital search for love, and I mean, it's like a messy room and the days that we're in, It's supposed to be a kind of lighthearted cover in a way, I think.
Yeah, it's remarkable reading this interview with an ostensibly quite self-reflective and self-aware artist that is clearly thinking about her work. It's a woman, I believe. Clearly thinking about her work and what the symbolism is that's implicit in each of these items. It's remarkable to find so little reflection on what the implications are of our, as it were, increasingly digital search for love, putting us in a position where our presented self, our, made up face and our Manhattan glass and our bracelets is so painfully at odds with our reality, which is slovenly and disgusting. And, before anybody says, well, isn't that just the case at any date that you put your best foot forward? That's, true in some respects. But this cover depicts a miserable life, and not a miserable life due solely to living in a studio apartment in New York, but due to a disordered soul, right? Due to the complete lack of interest in caring for the sort of small daily domestic tasks and items that make up put together life. And
she clearly didn't read her Jordan Peterson.
She did not read her Jordan Peterson. She didn't read her Marcus Aurelius.
As an ex-ennial, I wish to bridge the generational gap here and just remind us all and myself that even before the pandemic, in the before times, New Yorkers were notoriously slovenly. And in the old days, you would just meet someone at a bar and sort of like drag them up the 5 flights of stairs very consensually to your apartment, throw open the door, like do the 4 locks and hit the wall of like studio apartment stench that is a permanent feature of your New York apartment, like crash through various, cheap pieces of furniture and bottles strewn around, fall into a room that has a mattress on the floor and like overflowing cigarette butts in the ashtray. Like this is a proud New York tradition.
This is New York.
Living in filth and not caring that much because really you're only conscious in your New York apartment for about 45 minutes a day. Like when you wake up, when you sort of like pick through your detritus to find the shower.
But James, they have bodegas, okay?
So like, I don't want to be a snob about that. I mean, I totally, message received, like this is a kind of trope and it's even, a reality of people's lives. And I mean to sort of pass thunderous judgment on anybody's, far be it from me actually to
you
pass thunderous
lie
judgment, right? Exactly, on anybody's like slovenliness, because I am guilty of a little bit of kind of disorganized, absent-minded, professorial, whatever, but it does seem to me that the crux here is in the, as it were, normalization or even lionization of this way of life, right? There's been an illusion, it seems to me, between our kind of winking, laughing acknowledgments of some of our small imperfections, some of our ways in which we are, not everything we present ourselves as. And this just transitioned into, well, this is the good life. This is what is normal. This is what we should aspire to. Aspiring to anything else is somehow offensive or transgressive. Whereas it seems like at the very least, like I feel that I should be ashamed of my slovenliness. I don't know. Is that
well?
I
I bring this up not to engage in cultural relativism or even to celebrate filthiness,
relativist,
but to highlight that in the before times, there was a certain joie de vivre and an embrace of real life, warts and all, come what may, in all its imperfections. The romance of the city at night and the people sort of thronging through it. And there was an earthiness and a relish in the dirty, gritty experience of being a person amongst a society of people full of relationships, real people with names, people you knew, people who threw off very powerful vibes by gathering into these places that were very specific and very storied. And that energy was the lifeblood of New York City. And now it is draining away. And that energy is the lifeblood of Los Angeles and God knows how many other of America's great cities. And, and those of us who live in said cities can get in the car and drive through the like semi-deserted streets, like full of tent cities, and see it leaching away. You can't just shut down restaurants whenever you feel like it and expect that your culture is going to survive. Oh, well, people will move back in later, or, the infrastructure will still be there. It's not that easy. You're destroying the mystique. You're destroying the soul of these places. And when I see, the cover of this New Yorker ad, Marshall McLuhan said that artists are early warning systems. And the one bit of early warning, it's very belated, but in what is trying to be a sort of winsome look at the present, tips a little bit in the way that the young woman is sipping one kind of drug while looking into the screen, while a very different kind of drug lurks off screen on the desk or the table. And, I hope that there are artists who are not just trying to make people feel better, although I don't want to take that away from anyone, but who are able to find the opportunities in this limbo that we've been repeatedly dunked in to capture what's really happening to our souls right now. It's terribly damaging, and it's not being talked about, and it's not properly understood. And even to start to talk about why it's happening is preemptively being portrayed as a kind of thought crime against public health. And this can't go on without either leading, I think, to violence against the self, violence against others, or persistent mental illness and soul sickness that will long outlast the pandemic or the lockdowns themselves.
So so isn't it, James, that the artist is really, the reason this is a controversy is because she actually does a good job in painting a scene.
Right. Yeah.
And the two levels, at least two levels, are first, she indicates I'm honing in on a painful moment and finding the humor in it. But the pain is the effects of the virus and having to digitally date and not be able to go out. But the second level, because she does such a good job in painting the scene of this woman, is more existential. I mean, the reason we're talking about it is because when we see this, we see a very deep and sick culture that outside of the virus, all of its pathologies are represented in this image, and you go, my God, is this all there is? This is really who we've become. And in that respect, the virus has revealed who we are and what we think is appropriate. So even if this woman was out and about, there's something deeply askew about her life.
That's absolutely right.
Hey, has anybody? I apologize, Spencer.
No. Go ahead.
Have any of you guys? I didn't do this. Now I'm upset. I'd be curious to read the comments underneath the New Yorker's Twitter or wherever they first presented, or maybe even their Instagram page where they first presented the cover, because I wonder if their analysis is it's as penetrating as what we're hearing now, but from a kind of conservative angle. I wonder if other people are just saying like, well, yep, that's COVID and we just have to write it out and it's lamentable.
Yeah.
But this soul sickness stuff, I wonder if that's going over people's heads. Maybe it's even unintentional on the author's part too, which would make it more interesting.
It's a really good question, David, and I hadn't thought to ask it until just now, but I have my phone in my hand, so I'm looking to answer it. And it's the same as, I hadn't thought until we decided to talk about it to look at the title, which I think is telling as well, the Love Life title, which is obviously supposed to be a pun, right? We love, find ways to love life as you find that your love life is increasingly contracting into your computer screen. And the comments seem to run the gamut, but there's a fair few people that it's like, I love the cat, this cat is so interesting. And then, as always, there's the people for whom no social justice gesture is enough, right? The New Yorker is an overwhelmingly white publication, so they decided to use a black woman for their cover to make a point about how messy people are during lockdowns. I know. Totally relatable, minus the two cats and drinks. Who gives a rats during the week? Hit it up on the weekend and you'll be good to go. You're right. There's probably a lot of mineable content here.
Well, Cernovich, of course, from the radical right, his line was, did a misogynist meme maker create this pill-bottled ridden filthy scene to criticize women? No, this is an actual cover from the New Yorker. Yeah, and those are the two movies playing when people look at it.
Right.
It's kind of like a little bit of whimsical, bittersweet, yes, this is a terrible time,
right?
Because of the virus. And there's others looking at it going, this is our way of life, and it's deeply messed up.
It's horrifying. I mean, Matt, I think your point is really important, that what this actually is a successful act of art making. In some instances, I think, unintentionally and in spite of. There's plenty of examples of this. You could come up with others where, look, the artists' talent is blind and falls where it will, and there are plenty of artists who have really degraded and degrading philosophies about life who nevertheless, in their honesty are unable to help themselves from revealing certain truths. Mm-hmm. And I think when what James says is absolutely true, that it would be really wonderful to have a whole realm of artistic endeavor that proceeded from the assumption that, let's just say the understanding that this is a terrible corruption of our society that's gone on, or a terrible unveiling of all sorts of pre-existing corruptions, and then proceeded to expose those corruptions. But it's also the case, I think, that in its success, this work of art does that unintentionally, and it's part of why we're so riveted by it, is because it's horrifyingly accurate and unintentionally horrifying.
Yeah, the final capstone maybe is I hadn't thought of it till now and glancing at producer Jake's show notes, but the two Amazon boxes, Amazon stock is worth more than ever now, and Bezos has been making, at least, on paper, because a lot of it's wrapped up in his equity holdings in the company, making him richer and richer and richer. And this whole
At least 70 billion now, right? He's gone up like, I think, 70 billion plus since it started.
And this is, by the way, one of the people who was foremost featured in the latest Wall Street Journal article about how major CEOs are asking Biden to take action on climate change. It's like, yeah, now that you've had month upon month of just drastic increase to your bottom line, do
whatever the climate change measures will be, they'll help him against his competition.
Like, hurt me, daddy, right? I mean, that's like where that is.
Yeah, a good meme on the internet this week was, I think it was the small business owner was on the ground, the kid bully punching him in the face was lockdown governors, and the 3 kids filming it on their phones were Amazon, Apple, and Netflix. That's the other thing about all this. This is the biggest wealth transfer from the middle and lower middle class to the upper class, probably in the history of man. And we should all be cognizant of that and use it politically and intellectually.
And both left and right are basically quiet about it at the top. That's just disgusting. Disgusting.
Which brings us to the revolt against all this madness. Sadly, I will report somewhat breaking news that that business owner of Mac's Public House in, I think, Staten Island, who declared himself an autonomous zone. The police, the NYPD, conducted a raid, so they sent some plainclothes officers in to order food, and they've arrested him. Wow. First of all, why do you need to do a raid? The dude is broadcasted. I mean, if you want to crack down on it, just go arrest him, I guess. But what else? Well, Beverly Hills has voted to basically do what Pasadena did long ago and establish their own health director to get themselves out from under the boot of LA County's health restrictions and out of Newsom's restrictions, although ultimately Newsom can squash them. Joe, Spencer and I were talking about this on Tell Me What You Really Think, which we recorded just before this, but Eat at Joe's down in, he's got a few locations, right?
Yeah.
The original, I think, is in Huntington Beach, or I always forget, or Manhattan
Redondo?
Beach. Redondo, thank you, Matt.
I think it's in Redondo.
And he's just, his line was, "Look, I'm not closing. I can't do that to my service employees right before Christmas. I mean, this is crazy." There have been curfew protests down in Manhattan Beach and elsewhere where people burn masks after 10 p.m. and denounce Newsom. In blue states and red, I think people are fed up with this, and you're going to see increasing pockets of this resistance. There was, in a rural county in Virginia, they just voted to declare themselves a First Amendment zone and to celebrate the freedom of assembly of the First Amendment and to decry the tyranny of Northam's lockdowns across Virginia. So this is a healthy development. I was joking with Matt. You read some of these rural Virginian places, Appomattox included, and they're kind of nullifying at the moment state governor law, but really in spirit the whole federal Fauci-inspired madness. And so in that sense, I don't mean to trivialize the slavery crisis, but in that sense it's very similar. I mean, you have across America the revolt of localities against the center, and the similarity with slavery, however wrong-headed you may think the South was, and we certainly agree, both constitutionally and then as a matter of livelihood, the claim is still the same, which is, we can't do this. You're destroying our livelihood. It's our constitutional right to provide for ourselves, and it's just tyrannical to tell us we have to wear masks all the time and that we can't go outside.
No, and for those who don't realize, in LA County there are 88 cities, and some of them, like Pasadena, have their own health department. But what Ryan is saying, I mean, it's not just Beverly Hills. ABC 7 is reporting Whittier, the city of Whittier, exploring alternatives. West Covina is considering contracting with the Pasadena Health Department instead of allowing the county, right? So you have people now.
Nice. Yeah,
Whittier,
which is like 30 miles south of Pasadena.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, West Covina is saying they're considered contracting with Pasadena, which
West
is
Covina,
closer.
Sorry.
And Lancaster, Hawaiian Gardens are looking to starting their own health departments. I mean, so people are getting out from under and reconstituting the structure of local government. And this is not just happening in California, as Ryan said. So it's very interesting because you do see the play in federalism and the kind of the state and local system all of a sudden coming to bear. And I think what's astounding is I mean, am I nuts? I feel as if probably because a lot of these people in California think the election's over. Mm-hmm. It's not a pro-Trump, anti-Trump thing anymore. I think all of a sudden you had, as soon as that happened in California, you had a ton of libs going, okay, but F this though.
Yeah. Exactly. Like when it's no longer.
Let's all admit, like, this is a bunch of BS and you're not going to do it to me though.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is, and one consequence of that is conservatives really have to take note about who's doing this, both because we have to flock to these. I mean, I am so ready to eat eat a toast every day. Like I'll gain 100 pounds.
Even that's a long way from your apartment.
It's a long way away. It's not keto. Like I will do it.
Pasadena is closer. There's lots open.
There's so many places that you can pour, if ever there was a time to use your financial resources, to use the fact that we all have jobs right now for the common good, this is it, right? So that's one reason why conservatives have to know. But also, right, we've all been talking about the emerging working class coalition, the emerging populist coalition, right? Here they are. They're standing up right now to identify themselves, to be counted. And it's not because they recognize themselves as nascent conservatives or nascent Republicans. In many cases, quite the opposite. But the folks that I see every day, like in these, when I going out into these communities, to me, they have a big R written on their forehead that they don't see. And the reason for that is that they don't understand yet. They may vote differently than me, whatever. But like we're the same, right? If you are opening your restaurant because Gavin Newsom is a POS, like you and I are on exactly the same wavelength, and everything else is secondary. All the other identity stuff, all the libertarian economics versus globalist economics, like whatever, or libertarian globalism versus protectionism, like all the other stuff, like we can hash that out later. Like you and I are on the same team if you are standing up right now. And conservatives who are being precious about whatever commitment they have to some high philosophical principle or policy commitment, and therefore can't make common cause in their local communities with other people who think differently on those issues but are on the same page about this, those conservatives are fools. That's a recipe for losing. But the recipe for winning is go out and find who's doing this and make common cause with them and bring them under the tent, because there are people.
Spencer, it's good that you divorce conservatism from the Republican Party. I think people need to understand the difference more clearly these days, because the GOP as constituted at the moment doesn't appear to be the path towards salvation for many reasons. But I've been particularly let down, I guess, in my state of Maryland by a Republican governor, Larry Hogan. And so you're right about people making common cause. But that's why I always use, aside from the fact that we're a 501c3, the descriptor conservative rather than Republican, because I simply can't identify it. Also, I would love a new name too, because some of the other folks who call themselves conservative that write for publications that I would label as liberal. I don't understand why we call each other we call ourselves the same thing. So either they go or I go, but it's incongruous.
These are important points. I mean, it's part of the ongoing tabs. We're keeping tabs on this realignment, this recalibration. It's really been happening, since before 2016, but now it's coming out into the open. Yeah. I mean, there's a distinction to be made, I think, between Trump. One of the things Trump has taught us is, in the actual political arena, narrowly understood, that is, how do you vote? Which politicians do you support? What do you want to happen as the outcome of various votes? I think, if anything, the right, if it wants to win, ought to be more nakedly partisan, ought to be counting up, and whipping people more and more into shape. Because one thing that we're realizing that the left has known forever is that parties are the mode whereby you get things done. You make that distinction between that and then actually, right, whom are you trying to agree with? Whom are you trying to bring over more to your side than you already are? And where's the fertile ground for that? And there, you're just an idiot if you have any kind of allegiance that precedes your first principles and your just ability to interact in a sane and coherent way with all the people out there who are pretty sane, right? I mean, I've been on this horse for a while. Like, there's a remarkable number of people, given how desperately our elite class has attempted to denature and unmake the just average folk wandering around on the street. There's a remarkable number of people, a heroic number of people, you might say, who retain a fairly sane vision of the world. And there's a lot of kamikaze that can be made there.
Don't you guys feel it's a weird time? I mean, in the sense that this is a
No, man, this is perfectly normal.
I mean, but it's
right.
even beyond like, because it's not weird to us that things are escalating or going to get bumpier. I mean, we all know that.
Sure.
So for us, that is the norm of our time, that things are going to get crazier. But it's very strange now because there's a sense of, this kind of gray area where it's almost like the tectonic plates are shifting, but no one can do anything about where they end up. At least within the next couple weeks, and so there's a sense of almost not helplessness, but just observing. Like, okay, it's hard for any one person or entity to influence what's going to happen now, in between now and Inauguration Day, and everyone's just kind of observing. Or it's like a moment of silence before more storms begin. And it's an odd thing to say because, in a sense, the election's still being disputed, and COVID is being fought off. These restrictions, but it's a very strange vibe right now that I'm getting. If I'm Vince Vaughn in Swingers, it's a very strange kind of vibe this chick's giving me.
Well, it's also coupled with the fact that it's we're in the dog days of 2020, right? I mean, we're in this time. I don't know if it's true of all professions, but it's certainly true for us. It's like this weird mix between, most of our giving, meaning most of our donations, come in November and December because people are trying to get their philanthropy in order before the tax, before tax 2020 ends, before their window of tax exemption ends for us. So December we raise, basically 40% of our funds over the year. But at the same time, everyone's slowing down. It's not like we're having events. Everyone's going to Christmas parties. Well, in normal times, they'd be going to Christmas parties. But this stint between Thanksgiving and the end of the year is busy for us in a fundraising sense. But other than that, everyone's kind of settling into the holidays, kind of working, kind of not. I mean, everyone knows this happens. December has to be the least productive month.
In America.
For most except for restaurants.
By the way,
if they weren't being slaughtered by COVID.
In my role as shameless hack on this podcast, I will say that what Ryan has just said implies if you're a gajillionaire and you're listening to this show and you think that what we do is valuable, funnel money into the Claremont Institute.
Because what we do with your money is a lot.
So much.
Let me be clear. After opening this podcast with talk of Turkey and a moving story, we do a lot more than just yap at each other on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I mean
but everyone knows that.
Right.
We have a devoted
rocking.
But we're
to the point. I think one reason why the spirit of weirdness hangs low over the horizon these days is because it's clear that the ruling class has not been dislodged from power.
Yep.
Over the course of the past 4 years. And in some respects, it is clear that the ruling class, in its full embrace of wokeness, is drawing strength from that embrace.
Yep.
And yet, at the same time,
I didn't want to go here.
Here we go.
But it did though, because you rose the top. You raised the issue. Sorry, go ahead.
At the same time that this is happening, people are also picking up on major weakness vibes from the ruling class. It is palpable how, with every name that Joe Biden or the Biden bot or whatever holographic instantiation of his final sort of thoughts
establishment
says,
AI,
complete with the
with every name that's put out as a likely or a probable member of the Biden administration, it's sort of like a harrowing parade of has-beens sort of coming out from this gray zone that everyone had kind of forgotten about. And they're all still there. And they're all the same people that they were before. And they all still have the same exact ideas that they had in 2012. And it's just manifest that this crew of people is not up to the challenge of whatever it is we are being plunged into. And I think that people know this, and I think that they don't want to talk about it because it only makes them feel worse. And I think as a result, everyone's kind of like hunkering down and waiting to see what it's going to be that is finally going to blow through and knock this class off of its perch.
Yeah,
They've suffered blow after blow after blow for 20 years. From Afghanistan and Iraq to the financial crisis to the Arab Spring to the several bogus Russia resets, to the coronavirus, I guess, to Donald Trump himself and China, and it's a very long list. And many of these things they either actively contributed to or did not understand they were bringing about. I mean, just look at what happened with the internet. They really thought the internet was going to perfect their world system, and instead it threw it off its axis. And these people are aging, they're scrambling, they have money, but they don't seem to know how to turn it into more power, other than by consolidating everything even more and just engaging in patronage even more, and and just brainwashing people into thinking that there's no alternative. That's a very weak hand. It's weaker than it was in 2016, and I think people are conscious of this and don't know what it is that's going to change things and bring us fully into the new world, but know that one way or the other, it is on its way.
Isn't it kind of like you characterize it as the weirdness is it's kind of a standoff, right? I mean, it's almost as if, well, no one really won here, and you add to that the weirdness of Trump continuing to fight it, and it's a very bizarre, anomalous election in many ways. There's certainly lots of questions you could raise, which Trump is raising, but everyone's ignoring him, and then they're looking forward to crowning Biden. But Biden isn't crowned yet, and in fact, even when he, if he takes office, it's still what you're describing is still true. So it's almost like, yes, you won, but Pyrrhic victory. You all suck, and what you're doing disgusts us. We don't even want to talk about it. It makes us so nauseous when we see these names of this establishment that has nothing. It's completely hollow. Even people on the left know this. The left is going to eat its own, but there's a weird kind of stasis right now, where everything is like perfectly balanced and nothing is actually happening, and you can just see. We know things are going to get way worse. Like James is saying, I mean, what is going to knock them off? Something is, because this can't stay. But it's this weird silence or like a balance right now that is, it's like the thing is teetering just before it crashes in one direction.
You guys are making me think about the competition between Romulus and Remus in book 1 of Livy, where they're trying to decide who's going to be the first king of Rome. And I
love this classics guy.
And they say, "Wait, but this is a good one." I must confess, even I think this is a good one. They're trying to decide who's going to be the first king of Rome, and they decide we're going to do haruspicy. We're going to look at the birds, and we're going to ask for a sign from Jove.
Can you spell that word, haruspicy?
The whiskey. Haruspicy. The watching of birds for
Excellent.
Signs from Jove. Yeah,
Excellent.
or from God in general. So they decide we're gonna look for the signs, and I'm gonna misremember, but it's something like one of them gets 6 birds first, and the other one gets 12 birds next. So one gets, more birds, but the other gets birds first. And so which sign is right?
It's like the 2020 election.
It's exactly the 2020 election.
Exactly.
And what
How
you're
many
saying
heritage
is
turkeys they see.
right. And what you're saying is that we all hoped we would get a clear sign from heaven about what was going to happen next, right? We all hoped that there would be some unmistakable sign that couldn't be interpreted one way or another. But as Herodotus teaches us at length, and so does Livy in some respects, like heaven doesn't work that way. Like you don't get those signs. And it's one of the reasons why, as the author of Hebrews says, right, like all the sprinklings and all the rituals were to no account, because like all of this stuff actually just gets you more uncertainty. And so now we have this mess of tea leaves. We have this just, garbage heap of different things, and different people are picking out different ones to construct their preferred narrative. I mean, Charles Blow is over there saying this was still all racist, and here's why if you read the data. And Zaid Jilani and people like us are out here saying things like, well, many people, Latinos are breaking for Trump, gays are breaking for Trump, and, white men are breaking away from Trump. So that narrative is frustrated. We're all pulling out of the tea leaves the thing that we want to argue for, but in point of fact, like nobody quite knows what's about to happen. Yeah. But here's how the story ends, right? Is in an act of violence, right?
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Right,
the volatility.
One of the brothers kills the other.
Right, exactly. Like one jumps over the walls, right, and then the other brother kills him.
And the volatility, in other words, is almost like building. It's still because of this kind of period of silence. What's eerie about it is, none of the stuff we've been talking about is off the table. I have people like, well, you predicted blah, blah, blah. I didn't predict. What are you even talking about?
Right.
But yes, the volatility is all still baked into the cake. In fact, it's almost like pushing down the spring, what's happening now.
Right.
And that's what makes it so so eerie, because you can see one killing the other, and what that means in our context would be all kinds of stuff in various ways, accelerating again after this weird pause. But that's why we weren't going to talk about it. And maybe I'm to blame for that. But
I would just encourage everyone, if you haven't read it, to read Chris Caldwell's senior editor, contributing editor at the Claremont Review Books, senior fellow at the Claremont Institute. The Biden popular front is doomed to unravel at the New Republic. A lefty rag, of course. Chris has a long relationship with the New Republic, going back before they were, just a lefty rag. So they still publish him. Well, Chris is a pretty ecumenical writer.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to him for continuing to publish there and speaking.
Spreads his
people.
Wisdom far and wide.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a great piece, and the tagline of it is, or the subhead is, it may turn out that Donald Trump was the one force keeping the Democratic Party together.
Right.
And I think that's quite true.
It's got to be right.
As Matt said, this election's still disputed, but it would take not quite an act of God, but it would be an impressive series of events for Trump to flip this around at this point. But one of the silver linings among many is that a lot of these prestige media organizations are going to take a huge revenue hit in the coming years, because Trump has been great for their business model. And he's not going to be gone. So it'll be interesting, actually, right? So they may actually try to keep, this would be great. Are they savvy enough to really just continue to elevate him and continue to just cover Trump?
Yeah.
So it'll puff pieces with Biden and then just all Trump all the time.
What's interesting, like right now, it's clear they want to just ignore him. Like, you are a laughingstock, you are done, and we're moving on. But you're exactly right, Ryan. I wonder how long they can keep that up. If he retains some spiritedness and wants to comment all the time on what's going on, I could easily see the temptation to go back, because otherwise, as they're all saying, they're wrong, by the way, no matter what happens. Well, everything's about to get really boring. Politics will just be boring again.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing this bi-weekly 500-word piece for Substack. Just a publisher's note. And the one I'm gelling now is, and it's a theme that's been hit by our friend Ken Masugi and others, which is to say, it was inspired by Biden's tweet along the lines of, we've had tough times, the rhetoric's been heated, but now it's time to come together. Let's lower the temperature.
Lower the temp.
And,
Hey, Ryan. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just saying that the gist of my publisher's notice can be like, you guys invented this whole game. It goes all the way back to FDR and Truman, both of whom had no compunction calling their domestic political enemies at a time where sort of the deep rifts in American politics ideologically and otherwise were not nearly what they are now. Back then, FDR and Truman both had no trouble calling their political opponents Republicans fascists. So anyway, and the country club Republicans have been doing it at least since Barry Goldwater too. The whiff of fascism in the air, that was a country club Republican when he heard Joffe's lines in Goldwater's speech.
Okay, here's another
64. But
what you reminded me of is I think because on some level Biden and co must sense that they don't have what it takes to glue together the fragmentation, which is why I think we're seeing Obama trotted out. Have you noticed that more and more? He's just been in the news. He's just been giving interviews. He's been saying things.
Well, he hasn't a book out. Yeah, that's one of the
Can't we
reasons.
say he is the most active ex-president in American
Oh yeah,
history in
well
our lifetime?
we should be clear. I mean, Obama won this election. I mean, in many ways. I mean, the Obama guys have been running a shadow cabinet since he left office. Rhodes et al. I mean, this is really a third Obama term in many ways. I mean, you've got some Biden loyalists who are in there, but let's not kid ourselves. I mean, the center of gravity for now in the professionalized and power-wielding Democratic Party is Obama. And I tweeted about it the other day. I mean, his comments in some of these interviews, David, I think you have them in mind. I mean, he's the most divisive and demagogic president we've had in decades, I think. And it will take a while for people to realize that. And he has this sort of cool, I'm just analyzing and turning things over in my head demeanor. But I think he's the most divisive president we've had in a long time.
That makes sense.
Not anywhere close to Trump.
Some more shameless hackery.
In any sort of deep institutional and realigning way, I think. In really damaging way. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I interrupted.
No. It's good. Please do. I mean, I don't have anything particularly important to say except more shameless hackery, which is our Substack, man, has been good lately. And if you don't subscribe to it, you should, especially because, there's a limited amount of time during which you'll be able to get it for free. And it's called The American Mindset. And people write things on it that are on this podcast. And also people say
we should explain to people who aren't that familiar with what it is. And I'm happy to do it. I mean,
please.
The Substack is basically a subscription newsletter service. And we wanted to develop, I mean, we've pitched it on this podcast before, but we should just be clear. We wanted to develop a sort of new stream of content that's not quite as formalized in many senses, but just allows people into the sort of inner workings of what we're thinking about, some quicker takes on things, premium content that's interesting, but a little less produced than, say, the American Mind or the Claremont Review books, but nonetheless allows us another venue in which to be timely and relevant, et cetera, et cetera. So right now it's free for everyone. Go sign up. We're going to put it behind a paywall at some point for a very low price, very low monthly price, and just experiment it with another way, both to bring our super fans new content, but also just to develop a small revenue stream for us so we can continue to do what we do. So that's the goal of it. And
people should know to sign up, you go to Substack, right? What is it, American Mindset?
If you Google, the way that I find it myself,
American
being
Mind
a little
Substack.
illiterate, American Mindset Substack.
Yeah.
Just Google
It'll
that.
take you to it.
And it's very easy. You just give them your email and they just email you like the newsletter with all this additional stuff. And so we have video, we have little audio features with everyone here, and then little mini features where we're all responding to various things, and our producers are getting in the act. I mean, if you like any of this, you'll want to sign up, and you can structure it how you want. And there's just more goodies.
Yeah, you don't have to enjoy all of it, right? Like if you don't want to hear more podcasts, like you can just read this stuff.
We just wanted to end. This is a weird time. The election rolls on. The dispute rolls on. Big tech censorship gets worse every day. That's why Matt's cracking more scotch.
I'm just,
that's why
opening this cork. Sorry.
But my encouragement to everyone is don't despair. Among other things, especially when all the fraud is taken into account, both legal and otherwise, Trump probably got 77 million votes or so when it's all said and done, expanded significantly on his coalition from 2016. And this doesn't need to be, a rah-rah paean to Trump. I mean, he did something extraordinary, which was long overdue in the Republican Party, which was to expand the coalition to a broader swath of working and middle-class Americans at a time when the ascendant globalist managerial class left. It was feeling its power. And this was a serious rebuke to them. This is a political phenomenon that can be taken advantage of over and over again. There are many national political entrepreneurs on the right who've taken quite close notice of this phenomenon and are working intelligently to capitalize on it. And this ain't over yet. This experiment in American self-government, and partly, I cited Caldwell's piece about how the Biden coalition is doomed to fail. And also, even some on the left now have been writing in the last week or so that said, look, if someone on the right can consolidate and expand what Trump has done, the left has a real problem. So these are all reasons for hope. We're a big multiracial democracy with plenty of problems, a giant administrative state, an ossified bureaucracy. But, politics continues in the best sense. Nothing is inevitable. We don't believe in history being fated. And, we're all going to keep fighting. And we'll have our victories small and large. And, all we can do is keep fighting and doing it happily together as friends. So I'm not despairing. Nobody else should.
Amen.
I mean, Ryan is I won't stop till there's a heritage turkey on every plate. That's what I think. Wake up.
I want the Norman Rockwell picture, but with heritage on the turkey. Yeah. No, it should be Claremont on the turkey. Damn it!
No. Of course, Claremont.
Stitched into the skin. No, your job is about the same. And by you, just like anybody, right? Your job is about the same. And that is to wake up every morning and discern what God asks of you and fight the good fight. And my experience of the past few days, weeks, is that if you do that, you find that your own personal task is more enjoyable than the challenge of kind of projecting out into the future all sorts of doom and gloom scenarios. There's lots of fights on our plate. There's no question about that. But at least personally speaking, when I actually undertake those fights in a specific way, right? When I try to, go to a restaurant that is open against a lockdown order, or when I try to talk to a person at the counter who's maybe not, voting red, but is alarmed by a lot of wokeness, right? That's fun. There's joy to be had in that. And if you actually fight your fights instead of just the big kind of abstract fights that are not, as Matt has stressed rightly, that are not yours to fight, that when you don't try to muscle the whole universe into an arc of history that suits your own vision, but instead spend your days waking up and doing what you believe is righteous, you might find you have a good time. So enjoy that if you can.
Thank you, Spencer. A hopeful note. Yeah, well, among other things, we have a lot of fun fighting the fights we fight. Mm-hmm. What's more fun than fighting for America?
Right.
Well, thank you all for listening to the Roundtable. If you want to support our work, go to claremont.org/donate. If you want to learn more, visit our websites at americanmind.org, claremont.org, and claremontreviewbooks.com. Don't forget to rate, review us well. Share and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or where, Spencer's Weekly Encomium. Don't say anything bad.
Keep it to yourself.
Yeah, keep it to yourself. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to the production and engineering crew, Jake Gannon and Annalisa Lee. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next week.
Show.
You do you, girl.
You girl.
Your dirty apartment and 2 cats are fine.
Sriracha sauce or something?
Sriracha?
Yeah, it's like, I have another theory.
Few understand. I repeat, few understand.
All right.
We out.
Cool.
Good times.
Mm-hmm. See you guys.
See you guys.